Hi, I am Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I used for my research for this podcast. It is called the NVLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NVLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NVLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NVLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoy today's episodes. I also want to mention to you that I just launched my podcast swag on Wednesday of this week and have a page for it on my website, and I will also send you the link to it in the podcast description, and I will also send it to you in the newsletter that I usually send out on Fridays. I am now selling t-shirts, water bottles, and a backpack, and they all have the podcast logo and title on it and the tagline. So I am looking forward to watching the sales and seeing who buys them, and spreading the word more about my podcast. Good morning. So today's episode will be the second part to the interview with Myk Media and Me. And just to refresh your memory, he is a animator and filmmaker, and he has NVLD, and he will be talking about his life with that, and how the different challenges that he went through and how he experienced those, and is still experiencing them because he can't get rid of NVLD. And he is also a project social ambassador like me. And again, that is when you help promote the NVLD project by writing blogs for them, helping them raise money, and helping them continue their research on NVLD. And by the way, I am doing another fundraiser for the NVLD project on Instagram and Facebook. I will include the links to both of them in the podcast description for you if you're interested in donating. Thank you. Good morning, and I hope you are enjoying the new podcasts that I created, which, again, if you haven't heard of them, one of them is called Shiro, Be Your Own Hero, and that one was about heroism and inspiring yourself to be your own hero in your life instead of trying to look for others to be your hero or mentors. And then the second one is called Think Out for Your Imagination, and that one is about the imagination I had when I was growing up and how I imagined that I could fold up my house into pocket size and take it with me wherever I wanted. And then the next one is Chats, Barks, and Growls, Combos with Your Pet. That one is probably the most fun one because I get to do my voice. And I get to do Truffle's voice. And just, tell you what I think dogs think throughout the day, and what they think about their owners. So that one's fun for me. Alrighty, so I'm here with Myk again, and I would like to ask you about how you started being an ambassador at the NVLD project.
Yeah, it just kind of well, after getting my diagnosis, I just kind of started looking up resources, looking up
Mm-hmm.
groups, looking up communities, and I found that there's really not a lot. And
Yeah.
so for that, I wanted I wanted to reach out and kind of join this organization, just mostly because if you've had these experiences like we've been discussing, where we've just kind of had like these communication breakdowns with so many people, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you the feeling I had anyway was just I wanted to join this group, this organization, where I had this ability to at least say, hey, I have this too.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm going through this too, and I can you can look to me as a level of inspiration. It's like
Mm-hmm.
and my big thing, my platform that I stand on is I create my own opportunities, because a lot of doors were not a lot of opportunities were presented to me because of my communication breakdowns.
That makes sense. I think I kind of had the same thing when I found the NVLD project actually before I was an ambassador. I found them when I was just started the podcast because I wanted to provide another perspective in my episodes other than just mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that they had blogs from people, other NVLDers. I was like, oh, this is great. I can quote the blog and, of course, give credit to who I'm quoting,
Mm-hmm.
but I can have another person who has NLD, another person's voice in the episode than just mine.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Um, that's what I used before I was doing interviews because I mean, I still use them, but I was using that more because I wasn't quite sure how to reach people who had NLD,
Mm-hmm.
online and try to see if they wanted to be interviewed. Um, and I wasn't sure how they were going to respond to that. So um, I I even remember my first interview. Well, of course, it wasn't the best one because it was my first, but it went really long and too long, and it was a little hard to talk with the guy just because he talked really slow and took a long time to answer the questions. Um, but I think that's just because of NLD for him and how he
Yeah.
experiences it.
I was thinking about it prior to today. I was thinking um it was a lot of challenge for us to get complete this interview, and I was thinking it's that's what you get when you get two people within NLD together.
NLD.
And I'm sure, have you had this happen on a regular basis where it's like it's it's something so simple isn't
Yeah,
in the world of communication. Have you had this occur a lot?
yeah, I have. Just a sec.
Oh, I lost your voice. Well, oh, okay.
Sorry, my mom had to grab something from the room, so I'll just edit that out of the recording. um, but I think we were talking about the
Uh,
challenges of communication.
yeah, we're not just um so so essentially something that should be simple, and I think that this is um not saying anything anyway, but simply like our interview, something that should be simple being that we both have NLD, where something so simple turns into something a little bit more complex, where it's just
Yeah.
of communication.
Yeah, it is something more complex because, like you were saying, we both have NLD, and I always know when I'm interviewing somebody with NLD, it's going to be longer than if they were neurotypical, just because we like to talk, and I'm fine with that. So I actually, my podcast people know this, but I chop up the interview in like kind of 30-minute segments so that it isn't too long for them to listen to. And I try to listen to the recording to see where it makes sense to break it. Sometimes that's a little tricky depending on the interview, but yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I remember one of the other questions I was going to ask you was why you like being an ambassador of the NVLD Project.
I really like the reason why I like being an ambassador to it is like I said before, I want to inspire. I want to inspire others. Like so I wrote a couple blogs. One was about well, I think one that kind of encapsulates me, like my like art and everything, is creating your own opportunities. And so I like this so I can have that platform to say, hey, I know that it's rough. I know that a lot of people might not get you. A lot of people might roll their eyes. You might have friends that you lose, and you don't know why. You don't know why you lose these friends, and you want to tell your story, and the thing I can do as an ambassador is at least say, hey, I get you. You can do it, and you can make something. You can do something great, and it's it's crazy because not to completely compare the situation with Kanye, but Kanye West, but I remember when he released several albums back, he released this one album where he was finally diagnosed with bipolar. Now, this is bipolar, but he said, I consider this a superpower. Now, I don't consider NVLD a superpower, but I think it's a way that we view the world completely differently.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's it's different. It's like it's not quite a superpower, but at the same time, it's not a complete total deficiency.
Right. It's more in between the two, where like you may be talented in some areas like auditory and verbal, but then you might be at a deficiency in other areas like math or writing or science,
or just simply understanding people.
yeah, that too. Do you remember like one of your best or hardest blogs that you wrote for the project?
One of my hardest ones was actually I think and this is something that hit me like a devastating tsunami, and it was one of the last most recent blogs I wrote, and it was about 2 years ago. Well, yeah, 2020. NVLD and trauma. When I lost my father.
I'm sorry.
Thanks. And yeah, I lost my dad. He was young, and it was around the same time as all the COVID lockdown stuff. So that was, you don't realize how much of a learning disability you have. That's when I felt it. And why I felt it is because I wanted people to come in and talk with me, but I wasn't really do you ever get to a point where sometimes you're just like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but you want people to come talk to you, but you're not going to go out and talk to them?
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, I've been through some traumatic things in my life too, uh, where either I lost somebody in my family or went through some family drama, and it can be hard when you're in that period of trying to either grieve or just let go of whatever you're feeling, that it can be hard to talk to somebody else about it and trying to be with your feelings at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, it was around that time of, like, I had a couple friends that I talked to right before the pandemic. That was right when the pandemic hit, right at the right at a point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a couple of friends I would hang out with here and there. But at that point, I think I was in the house, stuck in the house. And then that's right around the time that my dad passed, right at the peak of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, wow, I feel so completely just like stripped of,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't just my dad. It was just like, that's the point when I was just like, felt so incredibly alone. And I was like, and I felt very much every inch of my NVLD or NLD. I felt every bit of it. And that's what my most recent blog post was about. No, I think I wrote one after that, but that was the big one where I'm just like, I felt it, where it's just, and I think it still lingers a little bit more, like residually, where I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like this thing where I'm not. I think it is a connection of more aware of my NLD and not reaching out. So I feel more closed off in a weird way, but not wanting to be closed off. And it was just very much aware of my diagnosis, very
Mm-hmm.
much. Hmm.
That makes
And is
sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think I'm more aware of it now because this is different from what you were experiencing with your father, but I'm stepping back into the dating world, and because I took a break during COVID, and I'm trying to figure out how to say things about NLD to who I'm dating without saying NLD. Like, what I mean is, like, I can say I'm clumsy or I have bad time with sarcasm or social cues, but I don't have to say why yet. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's tricky because it's like, yeah, eventually I might want to tell that a guy about NLD that I'm dating, but not in the beginning because you don't know how they're going to respond to it, and it's kind of personal, and you just you don't know if they're the right person to support you with it yet.
See, that's something I wrote about as well on one of my blogs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Dating and having NLD, and the problem is okay. Well, I guess I got a question for you then. Are you a driver?
Yes.
I myself am not, and
Mm-hmm.
that comes from my NLD. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember so many times my dad would try. He tried driving with me so often. He would one time we were driving and
Mm-hmm.
he had to jump over the center console, put his foot on the brake, turn the steering wheel, and when he did that, I was like, why'd you do that? And he said, you ran through the red light and you almost drove into a semi truck. And I didn't even notice any of that.
Oh my.
And so then later on, I end up dating somebody, and she was, well, like, I've got my driver's license, but my driving instructor said never let him on the road. Never, never let him on the road. And my dad was incredibly supportive of this, like, so much, in fact, that we moved from Colorado to Florida, so he could drive me. He had a remote job, and he drove me and my mom. My mom just was neurotic and just wouldn't drive, and me, I thought I could drive, and the passengers knew otherwise. And so one of my ex-girlfriends was tired of the fact that I didn't drive, and she was just, I'm going to teach you how to drive. This is the trend of a lot of the people that I dated. They're like, either they think they can fix the issue, or they try to diminish the issue, yep. And so I said, I can't drive. I said bluntly, I said, I can't drive. I've been told I can't drive. I can't. And she said, no, you can't. You can. And so we get into, I don't know if you've ever been to Winter Park, Florida, but the roads are incredibly small. They're paved in brick, and it's just pretty much a one-way road. They're like these fancy little one-way roads, and she was trying to get me to drive in this road. And so we're driving, and it felt like it's completely slow motion as I'm right into a light pole and bent up front axle, and she gets out screaming at me. Later on, her dad comes, and he's like, what was wrong with you? What? And of course, and I said, I can't drive. Later on, another girlfriend said that she wanted to teach me how to drive as well. We go to a parking lot. We're driving around. She's having me drive around a parking lot. She then has me get out, and she lights up a cigarette. She starts smoking the cigarette immediately, and she's shaking, and she's like, never again. I have no idea what I did. I have no clue. To me, I thought I was all right with the driving thing. Nope. And so my dad understood that, and she even said, I don't think I can go any place in my life with you because of the driving. So a lot of times, not only was it my neurosis of not understanding the sarcasm, it was this big elephant in the room. And where I lived very far in Orlando with my parents, and for anyone to come see me, they'd have to go really far. So there'd be dates, and there'd be like, it pretty much be one and done kind of thing. It'd be that. And so I wrote a story about that. Now, it's hard. It's very hard in the with NLD, and too. It's like it's just sometimes you don't understand there's a communication breakdown. It's like there's that communication.
Well, I can relate with the driving because, yes, I do drive, but I've had challenges with learning how to drive. So I can empathize with you in terms of that because I have been in a couple car accidents. Nobody got hurt, luckily. And I think the scariest one was, of course, the first one for me because I ran into a parked car and I was knocked out for a little bit. And my glasses came flying off my face. And I totaled the car that I was driving. So it was pretty bad. I was fine. I was shaken and afraid, but physically fine. And I remember when I woke up from being knocked out, I was like, where are my glasses? Because I can't, I'm not blind, but I feel blind without them. So they were right underneath my, either the gas or the brake pedal. I don't remember which one now, but they didn't break or crack at all, which was a blessing for me because I was like, I need to be able to see. and I think I broke the front axle also.
Oh,
So I couldn't move the car. So I had to call 911. I had to call my dad. They were a little mad at me because of what happened. But they were glad that I was okay, because sometimes when you get in a car accident, the driver can die.
yeah.
And not make it. So I'm glad that didn't happen. But like I said, I can empathize with you. I took, after my next car accident, which was just with a moving car, and it was probably the other driver's fault because he might have been speeding and I didn't see him coming.
Oh my gosh.
So I ran into this passenger side of his car.
Ooh.
And he kept moving after I ran into him. I stopped. I put my foot on the brake. So like his car got more damage than mine. But I stopped for like probably 6 months after that. I didn't drive anymore because I lost my confidence with driving.
Yeah, that's
And
understandable.
when I started up again, I felt like I was relearning the whole damn thing.
It's interesting because I'm kind of the opposite. Like I feel like I've got the confidence to drive.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like a delusion to a degree. Like I feel like I'm a decent driver, but everyone who's ever ridden with me, they're like,
Nope.
nope. And I don't know why, because I think I'm fine. I think I'm perfectly fine. But it's
You're
very
probably not aware of what you're doing, maybe
what
because of
exactly.
visual spatial.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what I've heard as part of NLD is the spatial distance relationship issue.
Yeah.
And that's that's the other thing. A lot of people, that's what happens so many times when I'm like on these dates. They're like, so why exactly do you not drive? And I try to say, well, it's a spatial distance relationship issue. And like
They don't
there's
get it.
they're supportive to a degree.
Mhm.
Sometimes they were, and then all of a sudden they're like, it wears on them. It wears on them. And that's why, like, for the longest time, my dad used to jokingly, um, have you? He used to always think that he would have to be my caregiver.
Mm.
He always thought that because he knew there was something up. He thought, fortunately, like I've kind of proven that I didn't have to do that, and I moved out, um, and all that stuff, and but yeah, I would always hear him talking to his coworkers, like
Mm.
saying, well, I have to do this for my son, I have to be there for him, I have to drive him. Like, I think that that's how he imagined that
Mhm.
he would have to do that. And fortunately, and that's why I want to be an LD ambassador. That's why I am one, just to tell people, like, yes, the world might say no, but there are a lot of, you like when I graduated film school,
Mhm.
um I submitted so many scripts, and of course it's like, um people like my scripts, but I got no's left and right. I got, it was just unpaid work left and right, and so eventually that's when I started just making event nights. I made event nights to showcase my art, and then local artists, because I knew how it felt to be an artist who was struggling. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to create my own opportunity if I'm not going to get one. And
Mhm.
so as time progressed, I'm like, I decided to release my own stuff on my own entertainment label. I, as time progresses, and I think, like, you've made your own podcast, like you create your own opportunities instead of just people. I think
Right.
you learn to adapt to that degree. So that's the advantage.
Yeah. I would agree with you on that, where, you know, podcasts can be a entertainment for people too. Um, and you know, being able to create your own opportunity, that is definitely a good skill to have, but sometimes it's not easy to do that.
No, it's not easy, and the other thing to keep in mind with that, it's incredibly, it can be incredibly discouraging, because it's like, while you're creating your own opportunity and you're working on like making things while everyone else says no, you're sitting there building up this thing. And
Mm-hmm.
at first it it takes a lot of persistence to
Yeah.
make the thing, and meanwhile you've got a lot of people that don't get your vision, and then finally, after I've been at this stuff for over 20 plus years, afterwards people are now finally going, oh, I get it, you've been
Mm-hmm.
working so hard. But at the time when I first started working on this stuff, people were like, I don't get it. And like, I remember one of the times I was working on this event night,
Mm-hmm.
because I was doing event nights. That was the main thing I was doing. Now people see that I do event nights, I do music, I do movies. But I remember this one guy who was in this. What's funny is I do like event nights for nerdcore music in Orlando. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
guys that was big in the scene in Orlando, he said to somebody, he's like, "What does this Myk Media guy do anyway? Like, what does he do? What exactly does he do?" And I'm like, that stung so bad. And then what's fun, here's a quick little story with my NLD and that. When I first started that event, I like built up this character of Myk Media even more with my Ray Bans and everything. I just owned the geek persona. I had a bow tie and everything. People thought that it was who I was, though.
Mm-hmm.
And this one guy who there was this one specific DJ that somebody didn't like, and they kept, and one of the guys who was kind of helping me out, I guess, was telling me all the things he didn't like about him, so he could get me to push him out, I guess, because I guess they had a beef. It was something really weird. Well, as time progressed, I was like his pawn, and I found out that he said I had um, this big group. They sat there and they said, "Oh well, I'm easily manipulated," and I just threw. I felt so hurt. I felt so hurt because I thought that these guys were my friends and everything. And that's the thing. It's like, I think that's when I got a little bit like um, more closed off, more aware as well. I think that might have been even prior to my diagnosis. And then when I got my diagnosis, it was like, you justified it even more so. But it's funny, because they thought, well, he's just easily manipulated. So instead of me building these relationships with all these people at the time, well, I did over time, but they thought that this character was actually me. And so the thing that really stung was was that these people thought that they could use me for their own thing, because they thought, well, he's this goofy kind of guy who's kind of weird. Well, what long story short, I ended up telling him off and telling the other guy off, and then I stood my own ground, and they didn't expect that. And
Mm-hmm.
but that's the thing. It's I think, have you noticed that from they think that they can assume a certain thing about you based upon your diagnosis? Have they noticed that? Have you ever noticed that?
Um,
Like, have you been bullied a little bit? Have you been had a maybe a harder time than you might have deserved?
I think I have probably had a harder time than I deserved. Probably not as hard as somebody can with MLD, but I feel like I have a harder, yeah, had more of a difficulty in some areas, like trying to budget my own money or manage my own money and being able to not spend so much.
Now that's something that's taken me a long time, but I think that money came, I think it turned into an over obsession.
Mm-hmm.
It came into an over obsession from my dad, and so I learned how to but for the longest time I used to be terrible with money. Terrible. I used to just, like, my dad used to have to bail me out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
Do you know, I know this is a different topic, but do you know if you were born with NLD or if it was caused by something else? Sometimes they
Oh,
say that
from
diagnosed.
from as far as I know, I've always been quirky. I've always been quirky. I
Uh-huh.
just thought the weird kid who moved around a lot. I thought that was it. Um, I thought that I thought it was just I was just a weird kid.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so now there is I did have a complicated birth, apparently, where
Mm-hmm.
had to they had to use forceps, and they dang near almost pulled my head off. Um, and it was a very complicated,
Oops.
yeah. And when that didn't work, I ended up it was a normal birth turned into a C-section, emergency C-section, and then I was born dead for a couple of seconds. And yeah,
That's not
and
good.
it was I don't my mom wondered later on if that caused some lack of oxygen to the brain. It
Mm-hmm.
might cause something, but I don't know. I'm under the belief that it's, like my dad always said, it's the way, it's the you deal with the cards you were dealt. So it's who you are. I
Mm-hmm.
that's yep.
Yeah, I was born with it too, even though I became aware of it at a later time in my life.
Yeah.
Um, I think I kind of know the answer to this question, but are you okay with having NLD? I
Well,
mean,
I don't really have a voice in the matter, but I like it. I like it. I think I enjoy it to the degree because it well, I'll say this, it's a good justification.
mhm,
Good justification because I it was weird because I after the last half, I was like, well, it was interesting talking to her because it feels like I'm justified in all my quirks. Then I'm not entirely, I guess you could say I'm not super unique, but I
mhm.
guess unique. It's just I'm not a complete total abomination. You know, it's I'm not a
No, you're
complete.
not.
So there's others out there, and
Right.
it helps me understand me a little bit more.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think it helps to filter the information to such a degree that I think I can use it in creative ways. So I guess for that, it makes me special.
Yeah, I can relate with that. It makes me special too, and I know in the beginning I don't feel as much as I used to, but I used to think it was a burden on my family that I have NLD, because it was something extra that they had to cope or deal with in some way, which was never true for them. They didn't see it that way. I think I saw it that way, um, and I don't see it that way anymore because I realize that they want to help me with they want to support me and they want to be able to help me have an easier life um, than you sometimes do when you have an LD.
Yeah, which is under that, which I think that's, with all the yelling and everything, that's what I think my dad was trying to do. He had the
Mm,
best mind, you know. It's but I think I got to wrap it up, Sue. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Then the last question would be, or last couple, but yeah, last question. Do you have a proud accomplishment that you have in your life?
I think my proud accomplishment is pretty much my well, I've opened up a little store inside of a store. So I think my if all goes according to plan, I think also I'm going to be in the newspaper again for a retrospective on all my little event nights.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the last 20 years or so of all my hard work, that while everybody else was going out partying, I spent so much time working on scripts, comic books, movies. I got a handful of fans, a handful of people that like my stuff. Not, it's a moderate, humble collective, and it's a moderate, humble success, and I can appreciate that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's and it's all the things I wanted when I was younger, all the
Mm-hmm.
things I aspired towards, and if I didn't have NLD, I would probably just sit there continuing to aspire and not do it. And I think that's what I think. I'm proud of that big chunk of work that all the opportunities that I created for myself, all the things that I didn't want to just sit around, just the movie that I had in the movie theater, all the connections I made, I guess that all my hard work, the stuff that people that actually wanted to hear my story.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, well, I guess, is there anything else you want to say before we end it here?
Been a wonderful experience, and and thank you so much. I've loved this interview. It's been so eye-opening, and I love your questions and the way you've conducted this interview. I had a great time.
Thank you. I had a good time too, being able to get to know more about you and your life with NLD and with the NVLD project and your filmmaking as well.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you.
As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.